Smoke hangs over Damascus after an Israeli missile strike on Saturday. The target, a building reportedly used by Iranian advisors to the Assad regime. 4 are dead, says Reuters, including a Revolutionary Guards commander. Over the weekend, a US base in Iraq hit by ballistic missiles, fired most likely by pro-Iranian militias. Just a week after an Iranian missile strike on northern Iraq, provoking huge anti-Iran protests. For the major powers in the Middle East, the gloves are off.
Because nowadays, you had the big players getting in the game. They are not fighting through proxies as it used to be.
More and more we see Iran embroiled in confrontation, and more we see Iran also suffering attacks. So the tensions are very high, and there's very high risk of even further escalation.
Since the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, this conflict has expanded. There are daily clashes in the West Bank. On Israel's northern border, the Israeli army and Hezbollah have been trading fire for more than 3 months. Already, in the first weeks of this year, there have been strikes in Syria, northern Iraq, Yemen and the Red Sea, and now Pakistan. The common element, Iran. Iran's proxies and allies are involved in all the attacks, and it's been directly hit too, by a terror blast in central Iran that killed around 100 people, and by missile strikes from Pakistan.
We're in the middle of a regional war. It's true that it's still low intensity, but all the region is going through an escalation track.
For decades, Iran's buffer against the US and Israel has been to build a network of allies, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen.
The Iranian Mullah regime is gladly sacrificing Iraqis and Syrians and Lebanese and Palestinians and Israelis and Yemenis. He's doing that gladly at the altar of its services, but the regime remains safe and sound in Tehran.
So building proxies, finding partners elsewhere in the region is a way of forward defense, is a way of taking the conflict outside Iranian territory and stopping the threat before it gets to Iranian territory.
But there's been a shift. The January 3 terror attack in central Iran spooked a regime that had weathered protests throughout 2022 and 2023, mostly from young Iranians angry over state repression and economic failure.
This does raise the pressure on the Iranian authorities. It makes them even more concerned about their survival. And it does then lead to decisions that are not very sound. The fact that Iran violated Pakistani sovereignty to hit at terrorist targets is an indication that they are not thinking things properly.
The Iranian missile strikes targeted separatist groups in Pakistan.
It provoked the Pakistani reaction. Pakistan replied to this by targeting terrorist bases or military group bases inside Iran, just to say that this is something not acceptable whatsoever by the Pakistani government.
Pakistan is a nuclear power. Pakistan has a very capable military force, an army and air force. So raising tensions with Pakistan and really is playing with fire.
And the missile strikes on Iraq have the potential to backfire and hurt Iran's economy, already devastated by years of sanctions.
Now, Iraq is enormously significant for Iran because Iraq, to a large extent, is Iran's lung, meaning the Iraqi market is a major target of the Iranian products.
The attacks by the Houthis in the Red Sea, as well as those in Iraq and by Hezbollah on Israel, risk direct responses on Iran by Israel and the US.
Iran is a poker player. They sit around the table and they play poker, and they play poker very well. The Iranian regime doesn't, to the best of my understanding, doesn't have an interest in a direct collision with the States or with Israel.
Iran does not an all-out war, but it is escalating. It is walking on the edge because it wants its share. It wants to prove that it is a major actor in the region.
The Hamas attack on October 7 sparked this latest crisis, and Iran and its allies have used the ensuing war in Gaza to justify their attacks. More than 3 months on, the region is becoming increasingly unstable. There's no political solution in sight. Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu quashed hopes of a future Palestinian state.
מדינת ישראל חייבת לשלוט ביטחונית על כל השטח מערבית לירדן. זה תנאי הכרחי, וזה מתנגש עם רעיון הריבונות, מה לעשות?
This is for me a promise for a continuous war and continuous conflict because you cannot ensure the security of Israel or of any country by military means only. You need a political solution.
There is no prospect of a Palestinian statehood, Palestinian sovereignty. So that's the very basic fundamental that needs to be addressed. Tinkering around the edges and not addressing that fundamental issue is a sure recipe for more disaster, more tension, more conflict.